Audiences matter most. You have to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And art doesn't live until it is experienced by someone other than the creator. That's the point when it becomes an art piece. The audiences shift and change through time. I am aware of the people that I am collaborating with, and depending on what I am doing, there are different groups. There are groups that I convene as a core group to help conceptualize, generate, ideate. There are groups that are the first group of volunteers that help understand how a certain project is going to advance. There are support systems that I have, whether they're interns that are part of my foundation, where I am trying to work with them to train them to learn some skills, but at the same time to engage in community. But I'm always aware of who I am doing something and why I am doing something, who I'm doing something for and why I'm doing something. So that's always part of the calculus. But I'm also aware that because a lot of the art that I create is seen by others who never see me, either because they see it online or they read about it in the mass media, or there are other eco-emissaries who are using an idea that I created to advance that idea in their own communities, neighborhoods, and sectors. I understand that the demographics shift depending on who the conveyor of that message is. But I've always had a sensitivity to that, and I know that I've always been very aware that my audience is community, and community is a very broad term. But I know it's never been the collector, and it's never been the critic. I mean, clearly I care about collectors, and I'm in museum collections, and people write about me. But the audience, the group I'm trying to reach and inspire, is one that I craft the art piece and the modality to reach. And in Miami, I am particularly aware that it is a community that has endured all sorts of changes through times. In other words, many of Miamians are from somewhere else, whether you came down south because you're here to retire, to start a new life, or you wanted the weather, or in a way that was more likely in earlier days, you came in from the Caribbean basin because you were responding to some external factor that destroyed the tranquility that you and your life had been accustomed to for maybe generations. That chaos, that transient, ever-changing dynamic and nature of Miami is something that I tap into and try to respond to through my art, through time. And now more than ever, as we see such incredible displacement because of the inaffordability of Miami-Dade County, I am aware of two Miamis emerging. The Miami that I grew up with, a multicultural, sometimes segregated, complex landscape with all its flaws, and a new, equally complex dynamic of investors in tech industry and entrepreneurs and people who are finding tax refuge and investment opportunity here in a way that changes what Miami is looking like and what is at Miami's core. And I look at that tension as an opportunity to do something about it, because in many ways it speaks to what the rest of the world looks like. Obviously, we have urbanized, we have, especially look at Latin American countries, cities become these huge hubs of millions of people as people leave their rural areas. And in Miami, this sort of migration that's happening from not only global sector, from within the United States, is changing who we are as a community. And if we can find a way of navigating through that and not understanding, not losing the soul, if you will, of this present Miami, even though Miami has been in a state of transformation since way before Julia Tuttle was born. Right? It's been in this constant flux. I just see the flux that's happening now being very dramatic because so many are impacted. There are so many who have to take 2-hour commutes to work in the neighborhoods where they grew up because they simply can't afford to live in their present day Miami circumstances. And I just feel for that loss because it's people who are being displaced. They're not leaving because they want to leave, they're leaving because it's unaffordable. There is a mild silver lining to those who are forced to flee, who are our own homeowners. And that is because as hopeful and supportive I want to be of Miami's growth and future, I'm aware that Miami has an expiration date. And Miami isn't a sustainable place over long periods of time, notwithstanding all the technology and all the good that future COPs, Committee of the Parties at the United Nations Climate Change Conferences, and future joint resolutions of Congress are going to do to help us with our climate crisis. Unfortunately, the damage is already baked into the atmosphere, and the oceans will continue melting huge chunks of Antarctic glaciers in a way that will spell destruction for swaths of Miami-Dade County, rendering them completely unlivable. So I do understand that there is some displacement years, decades from now, and that having some families take their wealth and moving upland might be good for the individual family that is leaving. So that's the smallest and most absurd of silver linings, but it is one. The more catastrophic thing is that middle class that is in Miami today will not be able to afford a Miami that is going to, I believe, unless we do something better and differently, be a playground for the wealthy that is elevated and built in different little island sections across this field of submerged present-day Miami. Almost like a Monaco fantasy land with lots of glitz and shiny objects and partying. But that core working class, that person who takes a shower at the end of the day because they've worked all day, I don't know how much of that Miami will be around in 2099. And it is lamentable. But explainable in that Little Havana is not in an island. Little Havana is in this peninsula, as is Little Haiti, as is Little Managua. And if Miami has something in its DNA, is that it can take its culture, its people, its ideas, and migrate with them. And I believe that Miami, in its DNA, has this perseverance and this can-do spirit and this ability to face a challenge, and when forced to, it can also go into exile. So I believe that Miami's future story, not yet written, will include a component that is geographically based here, and it'll include a diaspora that will find its place in a completely different planet. And I'm not sure what that means between technology, inundation, climate, and the change of governmental structures and systems, which we are not aware of today. There is going to be a new moment and a new Miami coming.